I handed my husband divorce papers at his office Christmas party, right in front of his affair partner. But that was just the appetizer. The main course came 3 months later in a courtroom when he demanded half my $1 million business. And I smiled, opened my briefcase, and destroyed his entire world with one manila folder. The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor of our penthouse kitchen. Not because I was clumsy, because I just discovered that my husband of 8 years had been planning to leave me for his 25-year-old marketing assistant and take half of everything I'd built with him. My name is Victoria Hartwell, and 3 days ago, I thought I had the perfect life. I own Hartwell Digital Solutions, a boutique marketing firm that went from my spare bedroom startup to a 7-figure company in 5 years. My husband, Marcus, worked as my operations director. We had the house, the cars, the vacations in Tuscany. We were the couple everyone envied at dinner parties. But standing there staring at the shattered crystal, I realized I'd been living a lie. It started with small things. Marcus coming home later than usual, claiming client emergencies. His phone face down during dinner. New cologne. The classic signs that every woman knows but hopes she's imagining. Then came the bank statements. I handle all our business finances, but Marcus managed our personal accounts, or so I thought. Last Tuesday, I needed to transfer money for our quarterly tax payment and noticed something odd. A series of charges I didn't recognize. High-end restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel bills from the Ritz downtown. Jewelry purchases from Tiffany's. Jewelry I'd never received. That's when I called Elena Vasquez, my private investigator friend from college, who now runs her own security firm. "Vic, honey," Elena had said over coffee that Wednesday morning, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "I'm sorry, but you need to see this." The photos inside made my blood freeze. Marcus laughing over dinner with a stunning blonde in a tight red dress. Marcus kissing that same blonde outside the Marriott. Marcus holding her hand as they walked into the jewelry store where he'd apparently bought her a tennis bracelet worth more than most people's cars. Her name was Sophia Chen, 25 years old, Stanford MBA. She'd been working in our marketing department for 8 months. 8 months of sitting in meetings with me, smiling, calling me Mrs. Hartwell with perfect respect while she was screwing my husband behind my back. But here's what broke me. In one photo, Marcus was showing Sophia something on his laptop. Elena had managed to capture the screen in the background. It was our business incorporation documents. "Elena," I'd whispered, my voice barely audible. "What is he showing her?" "Based on what I can see, it looks like he's explaining the business structure. Asset distribution, ownership percentages." My stomach dropped. "He's planning to divorce me." "It gets worse, Vic." Elena pulled out another document. I did some digging. Sophia isn't just some random assistant. Her father is Robert Chen, the venture capitalist who owns Chen Industries. Word on the street is that Sophia's been feeding information about your clients and strategies to her father's firm. They're planning to launch a competing agency. The room started spinning. With my husband. With your husband. Using everything he knows about your business model, your client relationships, your pricing strategies. They've been planning this for months. That night, I sat in my home office until 3 a.m., going through every document, every contract, every piece of paperwork related to our business and our marriage. That's when I found it. The piece of information that would change everything. Our prenuptial agreement. I'd almost forgotten about it. We'd signed it 8 years ago. Back when my business was just an idea and Marcus was a mid-level consultant. My lawyer, Janet Morrison, had insisted on it. "Victoria," she'd said, "you're about to build something big. Protect yourself." The prenup was ironclad. In the event of divorce, Marcus would be entitled to half of any assets acquired during the marriage, except for my business. The business remained 100% mine, as long as I could prove it was built primarily through my efforts and intellectual property. But there was a clause that made my heart race. In the event of adultery committed by either party, the guilty party forfeits all claims to marital assets and may be subject to additional financial penalties as determined by the court. I had him. But I needed more than just photos. I needed a confession. I needed him to hang himself with his own words. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed a recording app on my phone and decided to confront him, not to save our marriage, but to get him to admit everything on tape. Marcus came home that Thursday evening with flowers, roses, the same roses he'd probably been buying for Sophia every week. "Hey, beautiful," he said, kissing my cheek like nothing had changed. "How was your day?" "Interesting," I replied, pouring myself a glass of wine. "I had lunch with Elena today." His face flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. "Oh, how's she doing?" "She's good. Actually, she mentioned something strange. She said she saw you at the Ritz last week, with a young blonde woman." Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. "The Ritz? I haven't been to the Ritz in months. Elena must be mistaken." "Really? Because I have the credit card statement right here." I pulled out the bank records. "The Ritz-Carlton, downtown location, $347 charge last Tuesday night. Same night you told me you were working late on the Morrison account." The color drained from his face. "Victoria, I can explain." "I'm listening." He set down the flowers and ran his hands through his hair. It wasn't what it looked like. It was a business dinner. The woman was a potential client. "What was her name?" Her name was Sarah Williams. She's looking to hire us for a major campaign." I knew he was lying, but I needed him to dig deeper. "That's great, honey. Did you close the deal?" "Not yet. We're still negotiating." "Well, I'd love to meet her. Why don't you invite Sarah and her husband over for dinner this weekend?" Marcus's eyes went wide. "Her husband? You said she was married, right?" "Most of our clients are. Actually, she's single." "Ah," I sipped my wine slowly. "So you took a single, attractive woman to an expensive hotel restaurant. For business." "Victoria, you're making this sound like something it's not." "What is it, Marcus?" And then he made the mistake I was hoping for. Instead of continuing to lie, he got defensive. "You know what? Maybe I did enjoy her company. Maybe it felt good to have dinner with someone who doesn't question my every move or treat me like an employee in my own home." My heart was racing, but I kept my voice calm. "Is that how you see me? As someone who treats you like an employee?" "Sometimes, yes. You built this business, Victoria, and that's amazing. But you act like I'm just along for the ride, like I don't contribute anything." "You're the operations director, Marcus. You contribute plenty." "Do I? 'Cause half the time I feel like your assistant. You make all the major decisions. You handle all the important client relationships. I'm just there to execute your vision." This wasn't going the way I'd planned, but he was revealing something important, something I could use. "So you're saying you want more control over the business?" "I'm saying I want to be treated like an equal partner." "But the business is legally mine, Marcus. You know that." His jaw tightened. "Maybe that needs to change." And there it was, the admission I needed. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean we're married, Victoria. What's yours should be mine, and what's mine should be yours. That's how marriage works." "Even if we got divorced?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. "Why would you ask that?" "Just curious about your perspective on marital assets." "If we got divorced," he said slowly, "I think everything should be split 50-50, including the business. I've put 8 years of my life into helping you build it." I nodded, still recording. "And what if one of us cheated?" His face went pale. "What kind of question is that?" "A hypothetical one." "Victoria, are you accusing me of something?" "I'm asking you a simple question. If one of us cheated, how do you think that should affect the asset distribution in a divorce?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "I think adultery is a symptom, not a cause. If someone cheats, it's because there are problems in the marriage. Both people are responsible for those problems." "So the cheater shouldn't be penalized?" "I think assets should still be split fairly, regardless of who did what. Marriage is complicated, Victoria. People make mistakes." I turned off the recording app. I'd everything I needed. That night, Marcus went to bed early, claiming he had a headache. I stayed up until midnight making phone calls. First to Alina, then to Janet Morrison, then to David Kim, a forensic accountant who specialized in business valuations for divorce cases. By Friday morning, I had a team assembled. Elena would continue surveillance and gather additional evidence. Janet would prepare the divorce papers and review our prenup. David would conduct a complete audit of our business finances to prove that Marcus had contributed minimal intellectual property or strategic value to the company's success. But I needed one more thing. I needed to know the full scope of Marcus and Sophia's plan. That's when I remembered something. Marcus always left his laptop open in the home office. He was terrible with passwords. He used the same one for everything. Victoria 2015, the year we bought our house. Friday afternoon, while Marcus was at the gym, I went through his computer. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Email chains with Sophia dating back 6 months. Detailed discussions about client strategies, pricing models, and competitive analysis. Screenshots of our client database. Financial projections for their new competing firm, tentatively named Chen Hartwell Marketing Solutions. But the most damning evidence was a draft business plan that Marcus had been working on. A plan to launch their competing agency using my client relationships, my proprietary marketing frameworks, and my industry contacts. They'd even scheduled meetings with 3 of our biggest clients for the week after New Year's, meetings designed to poach them from my company. At the bottom of the document was a timeline. December, continue gathering intelligence. January, Marcus files for divorce and claims 50% business ownership. February, use divorce settlement to fund new agency launch. March, launch Chen Hartwell Marketing with stolen client base. April, Victoria's business collapses, leaving clear market for new firm. They weren't just planning to leave me, they were planning to destroy me. I printed everything, every email, every document, every screenshot. Then I called Janet. We're accelerating the timeline, I told her. I want him served with divorce papers on Monday morning. Victoria, are you sure? We could wait, gather more evidence. Janet, he's planning to steal my clients and destroy my business. We're not waiting. That weekend was surreal. Marcus acted completely normal. He made breakfast Saturday morning. We went to the farmer's market together. He even suggested we watch a movie that night. All while knowing he was planning to betray me in the most devastating way possible. Sunday night, as we were getting ready for bed, Marcus turned to me and said, "Victoria, I love you. You know that, right?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in weeks, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no love. Just cold, calculating clarity. "I know," I replied. But what I was really thinking was, "You have no idea what's coming for you." Monday morning arrived like a thunderstorm. I woke up early, put on my best power suit, the navy blue Armani that made me feel invincible, and applied my makeup with surgical precision. I wanted to look flawless when Marcus's world came crashing down. He left for the office at 8:30, same as always. Kissed me goodbye, told me he'd be home by 6, just another lie in a long line of lies. At 9:15 a.m., Janet's process server walked into Marcus's office at our company headquarters. I wasn't there to see it, but Elena had positioned herself in the coffee shop across the street with a telephoto lens. The photos she captured were beautiful. Marcus, sitting at his desk, opening the envelope. His face changing from confusion to shock to pure panic as he read the divorce papers. His hands shaking as he reached for his phone, probably to call Sophia. But the best part? The clause I'd had Janet include in the filing. Petitioner seeks dissolution of marriage on grounds of adultery and requests the court award 100% of all marital assets to petitioner, including but not limited to real estate, business interests, investment accounts, and vehicles. Petitioner further requests that respondent be enjoined from accessing business accounts, client information, or proprietary materials pending resolution of these proceedings. Within an hour, I'd frozen our joint accounts, changed all the passwords on our business systems, and had building security escort Marcus from the premises. My phone started ringing at 10:30. "Victoria, what the hell is this?" Marcus's voice was shaking with rage. "It's a divorce petition, Marcus. I thought that was obvious. You can't just throw me out of my own office. It's not your office. It's my office. You're an employee, remember? And as of this morning, you're a terminated employee. Victoria, we need to talk. This is insane. We can talk through our lawyers. Victoria, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How you've been planning to steal my business? How you've been feeding confidential information to your girlfriend's father? How you've already scheduled meetings with my clients to poach them?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. You, You went through my computer. I did. Turns out Victoria 2015 isn't a very secure password. Victoria. Save it, Marcus. I'll see you in court. I hung up and immediately called our 3 biggest clients, the ones Marcus had planned to poach. I scheduled face-to-face meetings for that afternoon to assure them that despite some upcoming personnel changes, their service would continue without interruption. By the end of Monday, I'd secured our client relationships, protected our intellectual property, and cut off Marcus's access to everything that mattered. But the real fireworks were just beginning. Tuesday morning brought the first casualty of war, Sophia Chen. I arrived at the office at 7 a.m. to find her standing in the lobby, clutching a coffee cup with shaking hands. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Good. Mrs. Hartwell," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Could we talk?" I studied her for a moment. Even disheveled and clearly panicked, she was stunning. No wonder Marcus had been willing to throw away 8 years of marriage. But beauty fades. Stupidity, apparently, is forever. "Of course, Sophia. My office. Now." She followed me to the elevator like a condemned woman walking to the gallows. I let the silence stretch between us, watching her reflection in the polished steel doors. She kept fidgeting with her engagement ring. A modest little diamond that looked pathetic compared to the tennis bracelet Marcus had bought her with our money. "Wait, engagement ring?" "That's new," I said, nodding toward her hand. Her face went crimson. It's not what you think." "Really?" "Because it looks like an engagement ring to me." "When did Marcus propose?" The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, and I stepped out without waiting for her answer. But I heard her sharp intake of breath, and I knew I'd hit my target. My office occupied the corner of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. I designed it to intimidate: black marble desk, Italian leather chairs, abstract art that costs more than most people's annual salaries. This morning, it felt like a war room. I settled into my chair and gestured for Sophia to sit across from me. She perched on the edge of the seat like she was ready to bolt. "So," I said, opening her personnel file on my computer. 8 months with the company, excellent performance reviews. Your direct supervisor, my soon-to-be ex-husband, gave you nothing but glowing evaluations. She said nothing. "I'm curious, Sophia. When did your relationship with Marcus transition from professional to personal?" "Mrs. Hartwell, I know how this looks, but it looks like you've been fucking my husband while stealing my trade secrets and plotting to destroy my business. How else should it look?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "It wasn't supposed to happen. We didn't plan it." "Which part? The affair or the corporate espionage?" The feelings we developed were genuine, but the business thing, that was never my idea." "Interesting. Throwing Marcus under the bus already. Whose idea was it? My father's. When he found out about Marcus and me, he said it was a perfect opportunity to acquire inside knowledge about your operation. He wants to expand into digital marketing, and your firm has the client roster and expertise he needs. So you've been feeding him information. I never wanted to, but my father, he's not someone you say no to. And Marcus, he was so angry about feeling undervalued here, he said you never appreciated his contributions." "Did Marcus know about your father's plans?" She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Sophia, I asked you a question." "Yes," she whispered. "He knew. The competing agency was his idea. He said once he got his share of the business in the divorce, we could use that capital to launch something bigger and better." My hands were clenched so tightly in my lap that my nails were drawing blood, but I kept my voice steady. "And you believed him?" "I love him, Mrs. Hartwell. He said he loved me too. He said once you two were divorced, we could build something together." "Did he also tell you about our prenuptial agreement?" Her face went blank. "Prenuptial agreement?" "The legal document that ensures he gets absolutely nothing from our business in a divorce, especially if that divorce is caused by adultery." I watched the color drain from her face as the implications sank in. He said there was no prenup. He lied. Just like he lied when he said he loved you." She started crying then. Quiet, desperate tears that probably worked on Marcus, but left me completely unmoved. "Sophia, you're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. You have 15 minutes to clean out your desk." "Mrs. Hartwell, please. I need this job. I have student loans, rent. You should have thought about that before you decided to betray me. But Marcus said, Marcus isn't here anymore, and based on what I know about your father's business practices, I doubt he'll be hiring you either. Industrial espionage tends to make people unemployable. She looked up at me with genuine fear in her eyes. You wouldn't. I absolutely would. In fact, I already have. I sent a detailed report about your activities to the ethics board of the Marketing Professionals Association this morning. Your Stanford MBA won't protect you from that kind of professional censure. I pressed the intercom button. Security to the executive floor, please. As we waited, I leaned back in my chair and studied her. Can I ask you something, Sophia, woman to woman? She nodded miserably. Did you really think you were the first? What do you mean? Did you really think you were Marcus's first affair? His first attempt to trade up to a younger model? Her eyes widened. You're lying. Am I? Ask him about Jennifer Walsh from 3 years ago, or Rebecca Martinez before that, or Linda Kim before her. Each name hit her like a physical blow. Marcus has a type, Sophia, young, ambitious, and stupid enough to believe his lies about leaving his wife. That's not. He said I was different. They all were different, until they weren't. The security guards arrived, and I nodded toward Sophia. Please escort Miss Chen to her desk and then off the premises. She's no longer employed here. As they led her away, she turned back to me with something like desperation in her voice. Mrs. Hartwell, what should I tell Marcus? I smiled for the first time in days. Tell him I said thanks for making this so easy. The rest of that week was a masterclass in controlled demolition. Elena continued her surveillance, documenting every desperate meeting between Marcus and Sophia as they realized their plan was collapsing. Janet filed motions to freeze all of Marcus's assets pending the divorce proceedings. David Kim's forensic audit revealed that Marcus had contributed less than 10% of the intellectual property and strategic value that built our company. But the real satisfaction came from watching Marcus try to salvage his reputation. He called me 17 times on Wednesday. 17. I didn't answer any of them, but I saved all his voicemails. The first few were angry, demanding that I call him back and stop this nonsense. By the 5th call, desperation had crept in. By the 10th, he was begging. The last voicemail left at 11:47 p.m. was barely coherent. Victoria, please. I know I fucked up. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Please don't destroy me. Too late for that, I thought, as I deleted the message. Thursday brought news that Marcus had been fired from Chen Industries before he'd even officially started. Apparently, Robert Chen didn't appreciate having his daughter's judgment questioned or his business plan exposed. Marcus's reputation in the industry was already toxic. Friday afternoon, Janet called with an update that made my entire week. Victoria, you're not going to believe this. Marcus's lawyer wants to settle. Already? They're offering to waive all claims to marital assets in exchange for you dropping the adultery charges and agreeing to a quiet, no-fault divorce. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. What did you tell them? I told them we'd consider it if Marcus agrees to a non-compete clause that prevents him from working in digital marketing for 5 years and signs an NDA that prohibits him from discussing our business practices or client relationships. And? They said they'd get back to us. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I poured myself a glass of the expensive champagne Marcus and I had been saving for our anniversary and sat on our balcony, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and crimson. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Check your email. You're gonna love this. The email contained a link to a video file. Security camera footage from the parking garage of Marcus and Sophia's favorite hotel. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, the day after I'd filed for divorce. In the video, Marcus was screaming at Sophia beside his car, his face twisted with rage. She was crying, trying to touch his arm, but he kept pulling away. The audio was muffled, but I could make out fragments. Lied to me about everything. Father won't even take my calls. Career is fucking ruined. Never should have trusted you. The video ended with Marcus getting in his car and driving away, leaving Sophia standing alone in the parking garage, sobbing. I watched it 3 times, feeling something dark and satisfied settle in my chest. They were turning on each other, just like I'd hoped they would. But I wasn't done with them yet. Not even close. Saturday morning, I received an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang at 9 a.m., and I opened the door to find Robert Chen himself standing on my doorstep. He was exactly what I'd expected. Late 50s, expensive suit, the kind of cold confidence that comes from decades of crushing smaller competitors. "Mrs. Hartwell, I believe we need to talk." I let him in, curious about what he could possibly want. We sat in my living room, the same room where Marcus and I had shared breakfast just a week earlier, back when I still believed in our marriage. "I'll get straight to the point," Chen said. "My daughter made some very poor decisions. I understand you've terminated her employment and damaged her professional reputation. Your daughter committed corporate espionage. She's lucky I haven't pressed criminal charges. Which brings me to why I'm here. I'd like to make you an offer." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." $5 million, cash, in exchange for your silence about Sophia's activities and a signed agreement that you won't pursue any legal action against her or my company. $5 million. It was more money than I'd make in 2 years, even with our current success. But it wasn't about the money anymore. "Mr. Chen, your daughter seduced my husband, stole my trade secrets, and conspired to destroy my business, and you think you can just write a check and make that go away?" "I think everyone makes mistakes, Mrs. Hartwell. And I think you're a smart businesswoman who understands the value of moving forward rather than dwelling on the past. Here's what I understand, Mr. Chen. Your daughter is unemployable in this industry. Your son-in-law, because I assume Marcus is still planning to marry her, has no assets, no reputation, and no prospects. And you're sitting in my living room offering me money because you know that if this story becomes public, it'll destroy your company's credibility and your family's reputation." His jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. "What do you want?" "I want justice, and I want everyone in this city to know what kind of people they're dealing with when they do business with your family." "That would be very unwise, Mrs. Hartwell." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze directly. "Mr. Chen, let me tell you something about wisdom. Wise people don't threaten someone who has enough evidence to send their daughter to prison for industrial espionage. Wise people don't train their children to be corporate spies and then act surprised when they get caught." I stood up, indicating the meeting was over. "Your offer is rejected. Your daughter will face the consequences of her actions. And if you or anyone associated with your company attempts to retaliate against me or my business, I'll make sure every trade publication in the country knows exactly what kind of operation you're running." Chen stood as well, his facade finally cracking. "You're making a very dangerous enemy, Mrs. Hartwell." "Good," I replied, walking him to the door. "I prefer my enemies dangerous. It makes destroying them so much more satisfying." After he left, I poured myself another glass of champagne and called Elena. "How quickly can you get me a meeting with Patricia Rodriguez at Marketing Today magazine?" "The investigative reporter? Probably by Monday." "Why?" "Because I have a story she's going to love, about corporate espionage, family corruption, and the dirty tricks some people use to steal market share." "Victoria, are you sure about this? Going public will make you a target." "Elena, I've been a target since the day Marcus decided to betray me. The difference is, now I'm shooting back." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the woman I'd been just a week ago. Trusting, naive, focused on building a business and maintaining a marriage that was already dead. That woman was gone, replaced by someone harder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous. Marcus had wanted a war. He was about to get one. The courtroom felt like a gladiator arena, and I was ready for blood. 3 months had passed since I'd filed for divorce, and Marcus had spent every one of those days watching his life systematically disintegrate. His reputation was in ruins, his career was over, and his relationship with Sophia had imploded spectacularly after she discovered he'd lied about literally everything. But he still believed he could win. Right up until the moment I opened my briefcase and pulled out the evidence that would destroy him completely. "Your Honor," my attorney Janet Morrison began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never lost a case like this. "We're here today because the defendant made a catastrophic miscalculation. He believed he could betray his wife, steal her business secrets, and still walk away with half of everything she'd built. He was wrong. Marcus sat at the defendant's table with his court-appointed attorney. He couldn't afford a good lawyer anymore, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 3 months. His expensive suits had been replaced by a rumpled off-the-rack outfit, and the confident swagger I'd once found attractive had been replaced by the nervous energy of a cornered animal. In the gallery behind us, I could see faces that would determine Marcus's future in this industry. Patricia Rodriguez from Marketing Today had run her expose the previous month, and the story had gone viral. Now, every major player in digital marketing was watching to see how this would end, including Robert Chen, who sat in the back row with a legal team that probably cost more than most people's houses. He was still fighting the federal investigation into his company's business practices, an investigation that had been triggered by my detailed complaint to the FTC. Mrs. Hartwell, Janet continued, built her company from nothing through her own vision, expertise, and relentless work ethic. The defendant contributed labor, nothing more. He was an employee who happened to be married to the boss. And when he decided that wasn't enough, he chose to commit adultery and corporate espionage rather than simply asking for a divorce. Marcus's lawyer, a tired-looking public defender named Tom Walsh, stood to object. Your Honor, my client's personal relationship with Ms. Chen doesn't negate his contributions to the business or his rights as a spouse. It does when that relationship was used to steal trade secrets and sabotage the business, Janet shot back. And it especially does when there's a prenuptial agreement that explicitly voids all asset claims in cases of adultery. Judge Patricia Hernandez, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd built her reputation on complex financial cases, looked over her reading glasses at the stack of documents before her. Mr. Walsh, I've reviewed the prenuptial agreement your client signed. It's quite clear about the consequences of adultery. Do you dispute that adultery occurred? Walsh glanced at Marcus, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Your Honor, we don't dispute that my client had a relationship with Ms. Chen. However, we contend that the marriage was already irretrievably broken due to my client's systematic exclusion from business decisions, despite his contributions to. That's not how adultery works, Counselor, Judge Hernandez interrupted. Either your client was faithful to his marriage vows or he wasn't. Which is it? The silence stretched for several seconds before Walsh reluctantly answered. He wasn't, Your Honor. Then the prenuptial agreement is enforceable, and your client has no claim to business assets. However, I'll hear arguments about the division of other marital property. That's when Janet played our first card. Your Honor, we believe all marital assets should remain with Mrs. Hartwell due to the egregious nature of the defendant's conduct. We have evidence that goes far beyond simple adultery. She nodded to me, and I stood up, carrying the briefcase that had become legendary in our social circle. The briefcase that contained 3 months of the most thorough investigation Elena had ever conducted. Mrs. Hartwell, Judge Hernandez said, you may present your evidence. I walked to the evidence table and began laying out documents like a dealer shuffling cards. Each piece of paper represented another nail in Marcus's coffin. Your Honor, Exhibit A contains email correspondence between the defendant and Sophia Chen, dating back 8 months. These emails show systematic theft of client information, strategic plans, and proprietary marketing methodologies. Marcus had gone pale, but he was still holding on to hope. He had no idea what was coming. Exhibit B contains financial records showing that the defendant used marital funds to wine and dine Ms. Chen at expensive restaurants and hotels while lying to me about business trips and client meetings. I could hear murmuring from the gallery. This was all expected, based on the media coverage. Exhibit C contains security camera footage from various locations, documenting the defendant's relationship with Ms. Chen and his meetings with her father, Robert Chen, to discuss the formation of a competing business using stolen intellectual property. Now Marcus was starting to sweat. His lawyer was frantically scribbling notes, probably trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Your Honor, Exhibit D contains audio recordings of conversations between myself and the defendant. in which he explicitly states his intention to claim half of my business assets in divorce proceedings, while simultaneously planning to compete against me using proprietary information. Judge Hernandez raised her eyebrows. Audio recordings? Yes, Your Honor. The defendant was unaware that our conversations were being recorded. In New York, only one party needs to consent to recording, and I consented to recording conversations in my own home. I pressed play on the digital recorder, and Marcus's voice filled the courtroom. If we got divorced, I think everything should be split 50-50, including the business. I've put 8 years of my life into helping you build it. The judge listened to several minutes of audio, her expression growing more severe with each revelation. When Marcus's voice admitted that adultery shouldn't affect asset distribution because people make mistakes, I saw her jaw clench. But I still had one more card to play, the ace that would end this completely. Your Honor, Exhibit E contains evidence of criminal activity that goes beyond adultery and corporate espionage. The courtroom went dead silent. Even Marcus's lawyer stopped writing. I pulled out a thick folder and opened it slowly, savoring the moment. 3 weeks ago, our forensic accountant discovered that the defendant had been embezzling money from our business accounts to fund his relationship with Ms. Chen and their planned competing venture. Marcus shot to his feet. That's not true. Mr. Hartwell, sit down, Judge Hernandez commanded. Your Honor, I continued, the defendant created a fake vendor account called Strategic Marketing Consultants and authorized payments to this fictitious company over a period of 6 months. The money was then transferred to a personal account he shared with Ms. Chen. I handed copies of the bank records to both the judge and Marcus's lawyer. Watching Walsh's face as he read the documents was almost as satisfying as watching Marcus realize his life was over. The total amount embezzled was $127,000, I said. Money that was supposed to fund our client campaigns, but instead paid for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, jewelry, and seed capital for their planned competing business. Judge Hernandez studied the documents for several minutes while the courtroom waited in absolute silence. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Walsh, does your client have any response to these allegations? Walsh looked like a man watching his career implode in real time. Your Honor, we weren't aware of these allegations. We'll need time to review. The evidence is quite clear, Counselor. These are bank records from your client's own accounts. Are you claiming they're falsified? No, Your Honor, but then your client committed embezzlement in addition to adultery and corporate espionage. Is that your position? The silence stretched so long I could hear my own heartbeat. Finally, Walsh spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. We request a recess to confer with our client, Your Honor. Denied. Mr. Hartwell, stand up. Marcus rose on shaking legs, looking like a man facing execution. Mr. Hartwell, you signed a prenuptial agreement that voided your claim to business assets in case of adultery. You then committed adultery while simultaneously stealing proprietary information and embezzling money from the business you now claim to deserve half of. Do you understand how profoundly you've miscalculated? Your Honor, I'm not finished. Mrs. Goff Hartwell built a successful business through her own efforts while you were an employee. You weren't a partner, you weren't a co-founder, you were staff. And instead of simply asking for a divorce if you were unhappy, you chose to betray your wife, steal from her company, and conspire with competitors to destroy her business. Marcus was crying now. Actually crying in open court, and I felt absolutely nothing. Therefore, Judge Hernandez continued, I'm awarding 100% of all marital assets to Mrs. Hartwell, including the house, cars, investment accounts, and personal property. Mr. Hartwell, you will receive nothing. The gallery erupted in whispers, but the judge wasn't done. Furthermore, I'm ordering Mr. Hartwell to make restitution for the embezzled funds in the amount of $127,000, plus interest and penalties, for a total of $155,000. And I'm recommending that the District Attorney's Office review these proceedings for possible criminal charges. Marcus collapsed back into his chair like his strings had been cut. His lawyer was already packing up his briefcase, probably calculating how quickly he could distance himself from this disaster. But I had one final surprise. Your Honor, Janet said, Mrs. Hartwell would like to make a statement. Proceed. I stood up and walked to the center of the courtroom, looking directly at Marcus for the first time since this nightmare began. "Marcus," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent courtroom, "you asked me once if I thought you contributed to our business. Let me answer that question now." His red-rimmed eyes met mine, and I saw the exact moment he realized I wasn't done destroying him. "You contributed 8 years of labor in exchange for a salary, benefits, and the lifestyle my success provided, but you contributed nothing irreplaceable, nothing that couldn't be done by any competent operations manager." I pulled out one final document from my briefcase, which is why I'm pleased to announce that as of this morning, Hartwell Digital Solutions has been acquired by Morrison & Associates for $12 million. The courtroom exploded. Marcus's face went white as he realized what this meant. "The sale was finalized an hour ago," I continued. "I'll be staying on as creative director, but I'll no longer be tied to a business that's contaminated by your betrayal. The company you tried so hard to steal half of no longer exists." Janet stepped forward with the final blow. "Your Honor, since the business that Mr. Hartwell claimed to deserve half of has been sold, and since he has no legal claim to the proceeds due to his adultery and criminal conduct, Mrs. Hartwell is free to start fresh while Mr. Hartwell faces restitution payments he has no ability to make." Judge Hernandez actually smiled. "Mr. Hartwell, I hope you've learned something about the consequences of betrayal. Mrs. Hartwell, congratulations on your new venture. This court is adjourned." As the gavel came down, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete and total satisfaction. Marcus tried to approach me as we left the courtroom, but Elena appeared at my side like a protective shadow. "Victoria, please," he said, his voice breaking. "We need to talk." I stopped and looked at him one last time. The man I'd married 8 years ago was gone, replaced by this pathetic shell who'd gambled everything on a 25-year-old's lies and lost. "We have nothing to talk about, Marcus. You made your choice when you decided to betray me. Now you get to live with the consequences. But the restitution? I don't have that kind of money. I don't have any money." "Then you should have thought of that before you stole from me. Victoria, I loved you. I still love you." Those words should have hurt. 3 months ago, they would have broken my heart. Now they just made me laugh. "No, Marcus, you loved what I could provide for you. The lifestyle, the status, the security. You never loved me. If you had, you never would have betrayed me." I started to walk away, then turned back for one final thought. "Oh, and Marcus, you should know that Sophia Chen is engaged to someone else now, a lawyer from her father's firm. Apparently, she decided she needed someone with better prospects." His face crumbled completely, and I walked away without looking back. Outside the courthouse, Patricia Rodriguez was waiting with her camera crew. "Mrs. Hartwell, how does it feel to have achieved such a complete victory?" I thought about the question for a moment, looking up at the sky where storm clouds were gathering. "It feels like justice," I said. "But more than that, it feels like freedom. For 8 years, I was married to someone who saw me as a resource to be exploited rather than a partner to be cherished. Today, I got my life back." "What's next for you?" "I'm starting a new company, Hartwell Consulting. We'll help other women protect their businesses and assets from exactly the kind of betrayal I experienced, because apparently there's a real need for that service." As I walked toward my car, Elena fell into step beside me. "So how does it feel?" she asked. "To completely destroy someone who betrayed you?" I considered the question as we drove through the city streets toward my new apartment, the penthouse I'd bought with the first installment of my $12 million windfall. "It feels exactly like I thought it would," I said finally. "Like justice served at the perfect temperature." That night, I sat on my new balcony with a bottle of champagne that cost more than Marcus's monthly rent, watching the lights of the city twinkle below me. My phone had been buzzing all evening with congratulations from friends, interview requests from reporters, and business inquiries from potential clients. But the best message came from an unexpected source: Sophia Chen. "Mrs. Hartwell, I know you have no reason to care about my opinion, but I wanted you to know that watching you destroy Marcus in court was the most satisfying thing I've ever witnessed. He lied to both of us, but you were smart enough to see through him. I wasn't. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." I deleted the message without responding. Sophia Chen was yesterday's problem, just like Marcus. My focus was on tomorrow. At midnight, as I was preparing for bed, my phone rang one last time. The caller ID showed Marcus's number. I almost didn't answer. Then I realized I wanted to hear his voice one more time, just to confirm that I felt nothing. "Victoria," he said, and I could hear the desperation in every syllable. "I know you hate me. I know you never want to see me again. But I'm begging you. I have nowhere to go. No money, no job, no prospects. The restitution payments will bankrupt me." "Good," I said simply. "Victoria, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake." "No, Marcus. You made a series of calculated decisions designed to betray and destroy me. The only mistake you made was underestimating me." "I'll do anything. I'll sign any agreement, accept any conditions. Just please, don't let them prosecute me. I can't go to prison." I looked out at the city lights, feeling absolutely nothing for the man who'd once been the center of my world. "Marcus, do you remember what you said to me the night I confronted you about Sophia?" I said a lot of things that night. You said that adultery was a symptom, not a cause, that both people are responsible when a marriage fails. "Victoria, I was wrong. I was trying to justify. You were right about one thing, though. We were both responsible for what happened to our marriage. I was responsible for building something worth stealing, and you were responsible for being the kind of man who would try to steal it." I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning brought news that Marcus had been arrested for embezzlement. Apparently, the district attorney had decided to prosecute after all. Elena called to tell me he'd been denied bail due to flight risk. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, nothing at all. Because Marcus Hartwell was no longer my problem, he was just a cautionary tale I'd tell to other women about the importance of protecting themselves from the people closest to them. 6 months later, I stood in the boardroom of my new company, looking out at the faces of 12 women who'd hired me to protect their businesses from exactly the kind of betrayal I'd experienced. Hartwell Consulting had grown faster than I'd ever imagined possible. Word had spread through professional networks about the woman who'd outsmarted her cheating husband and walked away with everything. Now I had a waiting list of clients who needed someone who understood that business and personal betrayal often went hand in hand. "Ladies," I said, addressing the room full of successful entrepreneurs, executives, and business owners, "what we're going to discuss today isn't pleasant, but it's necessary. Because the statistics don't lie. 60% of business partnerships involving spouses end in both divorce and business dissolution. And in most cases, the person who built the business loses everything." I clicked to the first slide of my presentation, which showed a photo of the courthouse where I destroyed Marcus 6 months earlier. "That's not going to happen to any of you." The woman sitting directly across from me, Dr. Sarah Martinez, raised her hand. She was a surgeon who'd built a chain of medical practices with her husband, only to discover he'd been having affairs with multiple nurses and planning to force her out of the business. "Victoria, my husband is claiming he deserves half of everything because he handled the administrative side while I focused on surgery. How do I prove that my medical expertise and reputation are what built our success?" "Documentation," I replied immediately. "We're going to audit every decision, every patient relationship, every strategic choice that grew your practice. We'll show the court exactly which spouse contributed irreplaceable value and which one was just along for the ride." Another client, Rebecca Thompson, spoke up. She was a tech entrepreneur whose partner had been secretly copying her code and selling it to competitors. "What about intellectual property theft? My business partner, who I was also dating, took our proprietary software and licensed it to 3 different companies without my knowledge." "Criminal charges," I said without hesitation. "Intellectual property theft is a federal crime. We'll work with the FBI's white-collar crime unit to build a case that puts him in prison and gets you treble damages." This was my life now. I spent my days helping other women navigate the intersection of personal betrayal and business destruction. I developed a reputation for being ruthless, calculating, and completely unwilling to let cheaters and thieves profit from their betrayal. The media had dubbed me the divorce destroyer, after a profile in Forbes magazine detailed how I'd systematically dismantled Marcus's life while protecting my own assets. I didn't love the nickname, but I understood its value. Fear was a powerful marketing tool. After the consultation ended, I returned to my corner office, bigger and more intimidating than the one at my old company, to find Elena waiting with an update I'd been expecting. Marcus pled guilty, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. 18 months in federal prison, plus 5 years probation and full restitution. I nodded without looking up from the contract I was reviewing. What about Sophia? Married the lawyer 3 months ago, moved to Seattle, changed her name. Apparently, she's trying to pretend none of this ever happened. And Robert Chen, still fighting the federal investigation, but it's not going well. 3 more of his companies have been raided, and the SEC is looking into securities fraud. Word is he might flip on some bigger fish to save himself. I signed the contract and set it aside. Another client protected, another cheater about to be destroyed. Elena, do you ever think I went too far with Marcus? She studied my face for a moment. Are you having second thoughts? No, I'm just curious about your perspective. Victoria, he didn't just cheat on you. He systematically planned to destroy your business, steal your clients, and leave you with nothing. If you'd been soft on him, he would have taken that as weakness and tried again. She was right, of course. Marcus hadn't deserved mercy because he'd never planned to show me any. My assistant buzzed the intercom. Mrs. Hartwell, you have a call on line 1. She says it's urgent. I picked up the phone. This is Victoria Hartwell. Mrs. Hartwell, my name is Amanda Foster. I think I need your help. Amanda's story was depressingly familiar. Successful restaurant chain owner whose husband had been embezzling money to fund his affair with their head chef. He was now claiming he deserved half the business because he'd supported her dreams while she built the company. Mrs. Foster, I said, how quickly can you get to my office? I'm actually in your lobby. I smiled, another woman who understood that time was critical in these situations. Send her up, I told my assistant. 30 minutes later, Amanda Foster sat across from me, tears streaming down her face as she described how her husband of 15 years had betrayed her in every way possible. The worst part, she said, is that he actually believes he deserves half of everything. He keeps saying that marriage is a partnership and that he supported my career. What kind of support did he provide? He attended industry events with me. He gave me advice about hiring decisions. He listened when I complained about difficult employees. So he was a good husband up until the point where he decided to steal from you and cheat on you. Exactly. And now he's acting like I owe him millions of dollars for basic spousal support. I opened a new file folder and wrote Amanda Foster on the tab. Another woman who'd built something beautiful, only to discover that the person closest to her saw it as something to be exploited. Amanda, I need you to understand something before we proceed. What I do isn't therapy, it's war. When I take your case, I will destroy your husband completely. Financially, professionally, personally, there will be nothing left of his reputation or his future. Is that what you want? She wiped her eyes and looked at me with the kind of cold determination I recognized immediately. Mrs. Hartwell, he stole $200,000 from my business to buy jewelry for his mistress. He scheduled meetings with my investors to pitch them on a competing restaurant concept using my recipes and business model. And yesterday, I found out he's been telling people that I'm mentally unstable and that he's the real brains behind our success. Her voice was getting stronger with each word. So yes, I want you to destroy him completely. I smiled and pulled out a contract. Then let's get started. As Amanda signed the paperwork that would end her husband's life as he knew it, I reflected on how much I'd changed since that night 6 months ago when I'd found the photos of Marcus and Sophia. The woman who'd stood in her kitchen, heartbroken and betrayed, was gone. In her place was someone harder, more focused, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who understood that mercy was a luxury that cheaters and thieves didn't deserve. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Victoria, this is Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did to you. Prison gives you a lot of time to think. I'm sorry. I hope you can find peace. I showed the message to Amanda, who read it with disgust. "Are you going to respond?" she asked. "No," I said, deleting the message. "Marcus Hartwell is irrelevant to my life now, just like your husband will be irrelevant to yours once we're finished with him." That evening, I attended a networking event for women entrepreneurs. These gatherings had become routine for me. They were excellent sources of new clients and referral partners. But tonight felt different. As I mingled with successful women from various industries, I realized that many of them looked at me with something approaching awe. I'd become more than just a consultant. I was a symbol of what was possible when women stopped accepting betrayal and started fighting back. Dr. Patricia Kim, a biotech CEO I'd helped 2 months earlier, approached me with a glass of champagne. "Victoria, I wanted to thank you again. The settlement came through yesterday. My ex-husband got nothing, and I retained full control of my company." "How is he handling it?" "About as well as you'd expect. He's moved back in with his mother and started a blog about how the family court system is biased against men." I laughed. They always blame the system instead of taking responsibility for their choices. Exactly. Oh, and get this, his girlfriend left him the day after the settlement was announced. Apparently, she was only interested in his potential wealth, not his actual character. "Shocking," I said dryly. As the evening wound down, I found myself on the hotel's rooftop terrace, looking out at the city skyline. A year ago, I'd been planning my 8th wedding anniversary, believing I had a partner who valued what we'd built together. Tonight, I was planning the expansion of my consulting firm into 3 new cities. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Janet Morrison's number. "Victoria, I have news you're going to love. Remember Robert Chen?" "Of course. He was indicted this afternoon. Securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, and about 6 other federal charges. His company's stock price dropped 70% in after-hours trading." "What about Sophia?" "Her husband filed for divorce this morning. Apparently, he discovered that she'd lied about her employment history and her role in the Chen Industries scandal. She's about to lose everything, too." I felt that familiar cold satisfaction settle in my chest. Justice has a way of catching up with people, doesn't it? It does when you help it along. After I hung up, I remained on the terrace for another hour, thinking about the woman I'd become and the woman I'd been. Some people might say I'd lost my capacity for forgiveness, that I'd become hard and calculating. They were right, and I was proud of it, because forgiveness was for people who deserved it, and mercy was for people who showed mercy to others. Marcus, Sophia, and Robert Chen had shown me exactly who they were when they thought they held all the power. Now they knew who I was when I held it. My final thought, as I drove home to my penthouse apartment filled with art I'd bought with the money from selling my company, was about the $12 million windfall that had started my new life. Marcus had spent 8 years thinking he was entitled to half of everything I'd built. In the end, his betrayal had earned me more money than I'd ever imagined possible. His attempt to destroy me had made me richer, more powerful, and more respected than I'd ever been while married to him. As I settled into bed that night, I smiled at the irony. Marcus had gotten exactly what he deserved. Nothing. And I'd gotten exactly what I'd earned. Everything. The next morning brought a new client, a new challenge, and another opportunity to prove that betrayal had consequences. I was no longer the woman who trusted blindly and loved unconditionally. I was the woman who protected what mattered and destroyed anyone who tried to take it. And I'd never been happier. 6 months later, as I stood in the boardroom of my expanded consulting firm, addressing a room full of attorneys, investigators, and forensic accountants who now worked for me, I realized that Marcus had given me the greatest gift possible. He'd shown me who I really was when everything I'd built was threatened. He'd revealed the steel core beneath the trusting exterior. He'd taught me that the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. And in trying to destroy me, he'd created something far more dangerous than the woman he'd married. He'd created a woman who would never be destroyed again. As I concluded my presentation to the team that would help other betrayed women reclaim their power, I thought about the text message I'd received that morning from a potential client. "Mrs. Hartwell, my husband thinks he's going to take half my business in our divorce. He has no idea what's coming. Can you help me make sure he gets exactly what he deserves? I'd replied immediately, nothing would give me more pleasure. Because that's what I did now. I gave cheaters and thieves exactly what they deserved. Nothing. And I gave their victims exactly what they'd earned. Everything. Justice, it turned out, was the most satisfying business in the world. The end.